Welcome to Craft Community, the local Irish beer podcast brought to you by the Independent Craft Brewers of Ireland and Board Bia. My name is Susan Boyle. I'm an international beer judge and award-winning beer writer. On this episode, I am going to be joined by David Walsh-Kemmis from Ballykilcavan Brewery. Hi, David. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
I'm also delighted to be joined by Wim de Jongh from Hope Brewing. Lovely to have you, Brent. And we're also being joined online through a digital link with Rick Vert, who is from Kinnegar Brewing.
Yep. Hi, Susan. How are you?
Hi, Rick. I'm great, thanks. We're going to have a chat on this episode about something that I think is really pressing to the survival of the Irish craft beer industry. And that's looking at not just what's happening now, but looking at the things that you can do now so that it will be a sustainable industry as well. And this is why we've pooled together this panel of people who are so committed to sustainability within the industry, and also with this being something that that sustains and keeps going and that has a future for brewing within Ireland. And I'm sitting right across from David from Ballykilcavan Brewery, who happens to be a gold star member, shiny gold star for you, in relation to the Origin Green programme from Board Bia. Maybe you'll tell us a little bit about your journey on that and how you feel and how you've progressed along that journey.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just to start off with, like, the brewery on our place is there because I started off as a farmer. I'd still describe myself as a farmer who happens to have a brewery on the farm. And we decided farming in terms of financial stability, we needed to do something different.
Yeah.
So we opened up the brewery. We're growing the malt and barley on the farm. That's one of the reasons we have a brewery. And it was really just a case of securing the financial future of it. But there's no point in doing that if we're not going to do it sustainably as well, because most farmers are very, very interested in looking after the environment and looking after the ground and the soils around them, because if you don't do that, you don't have a future in farming.
Absolutely.
So my ancestors have done that through the years on the farm that we work on. I wanted to continue that in terms of doing the brewing. And then once the brewing was up and running and the brewery was going, making it sustainable and going into some sort of a scheme whereby we could get someone to come in and help us set out all the various different ways that we were going to try and run it sustainably. And that's what the Origin Green programme allowed us to do, because Board Bia will set up this programme where you can come in, they will tell you, these are the maybe 6 or 7 different headings that you should be concentrating on. These are all the various things that we should be doing, and there's a bit of interaction between us and them in terms of what targets we're going to set up, and then really importantly, it's independently audited. So someone will come in and check all the things that we said we were going to do and make sure that we're actually doing them. But that then gives me the confidence to go out, if we're talking to anyone from a customer to a distributor, that we are doing these things, and it's not just me telling you, it's someone independent coming in and auditing it.
It's great that it's measurable as well, because when you start trying to think about how you're going to tackle something like sustainability, it can just all seem like a huge impossible thing. But the impression I get from Origin Green is that they allow you to start where you're starting, and then you can build on that, and that it's a process rather than just a thing that you tick the box on and that you're done.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's very much a set your baseline, and that's probably your first job in terms of setting your baseline and all the different targets that you're looking at. But then very much setting your targets. What are you going to actually achieve over the course of the next 5 years in general in terms of the plan? But then year by year, and then every year it's getting audited. So, the progress is being checked as you go along. And that's where they'll give you a points target, basically, depending on how well you've done. And if you get over a certain number of points, you get to be a gold star member.
A gold star
which is great.
member.
Now, I would have brought it with us, but we've stuck it onto the brewery wall. It's not very transportable.
I love it. It's not transportable, but I really did it. It's like the next time when you go and win an Oscar, you'll be able to bring it with you.
Bring it with me, put it down on the table. Exactly.
It's brilliant. So, Wim, when you're looking at your brewery, tell me a little bit about maybe the steps that you've taken to kind of assess the sustainability of it, or work within the community that you're based in.
Well, when I talk about Origin Green, we're a member of Origin Green, or a certified member of Origin Green, since 2018.
Wow.
And and it has been a great journey, like David said. I always go on the basis, anything that you can't measure, you can't manage.
Absolutely.
And by measuring the certain targets, we can manage them. And it has created awareness. Sustainability has always been very high on our agenda anyway. But if you're not measuring certain things, it is difficult to manage and to see are you doing better or are you doing worse? So I like that about the program. The aspect you touched on, the local part of our business is extremely important, and that also comes through our Origin Green target. So anytime we get an opportunity to support a local raffle or a charity or a school, we always do that. But it's logical that we do that. You know? I find any of the measures we have taken for Origin Green also make commercial sense. They don't just make sustainability sense. They also make commercial sense. So if I'm supporting a raffle for a ladies' lunch in Howth Yacht Club, of course that's good for us, because then they see our brand again. And we love doing that because supplying the local community, more than 50% of our sales are in North County Dublin, and that's obviously a big advantage we have over breweries that are based down the country.
Or in Donegal, for example.
Yeah, or
like
in Laois.
In Laois,
And that really helps us, with our targets as well.
But it's also a very clever idea to look at what's on your doorstep and note that these aspects of sustainability, what will help grow your business, is also something that you possibly have at hand, you know, and how your business is a small business placed in a community. So maybe Rick, you'll tell me a little bit about your journey and sustainability within your brewery.
Yeah, I mean we're very similar to both David and Vim. That we're members of Origin Green. We did get the gold member status this year, which is something that we're very, very proud of. We worked quite hard to kind of get there. And I think also maybe similar to what both the guys have been saying is that I suppose we don't really view sustainability as kind of an extra to the business or something as a separate category. It's very much kind of integrated in the way we actually run the entire business. And so I would agree with what Vim is saying is that typically we're finding that if we're taking a sustainable approach to things, there's usually there is actually a commercial argument to be made for it. If we're using less resources, especially right now, we can see we installed solar panels at the beginning of or the end of last year. We're producing about 35% of our own electricity on site now. Given the current energy crisis that we're seeing, that's actually not just an environmentally sound decision. It's also kind of an economically sound decision. But some of the other things that we're seeing is not only that there's really kind of smart economics behind some of the measures that we're taking. We also feel that basically by having that kind of sustainable perspective in our work, it's making us better brewers, to be honest. So we have to go back and we have to, we've reviewed how we produce our product and from different angles. And we found that we've been able to improve our procedures and actually improve the quality of our product by looking at, in detail from the viewpoint of sustainability. So, I suppose that we moved into the brewery that we're in now in 2017. And so it gave us kind of like a clean slate to begin operating from. And since that point, we've viewed all of our decisions from the perspective of sustainability, and we just feel that it's leading us to making a better and better product as we go on.
That's really interesting. I've always got the impression with Kinnegar that you are mindful of the place that you come from as well. That you're a brewery that is based in a beautiful rural community, and being aware that I suppose maybe the sustainability aspect of it is about being in harmony with some of the things that are around you. Would you think?
Well, it's certainly been part of the philosophy that we've had from the beginning. Is we are very much part of the landscape that we're in. Donegal is very much it's quite a pristine, beautiful rural landscape. But I don't know, it plays a part in what we do, but I don't know that makes us any different than maybe somebody who's in an urban landscape. I think, I think everybody is everybody's aware of the topics, and everybody, I think, is trying to be, working in harmony with their surroundings. So I don't know that makes us any different than, say, Vim or David in that sense, but it's yes, we feel a part of the landscape that we come from.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting that the landscapes are different, but that feeling of being part of them is something that seems to come across, whether it's in a more urban setting like Hope with Vim, or on a farm that has been in your family for generations upon generations. This kind of sense of, I suppose, being a business that is contributing rather than taking away from the environments that you're in. It seems really key to the three of you in the discussion that we're having here about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us on the farm, it's very much a case of adding to the farm. I mean, I would kill for the footfall that Vim is able to generate in terms of the number of people on his doorstep. But so we don't have that advantage. And if you're going to set up a brewery on a farm, you don't have the services, you don't have things like that as well. But you do have the advantages of being able to grow your own ingredients. Yeah. For us, like we were able to take barley from the farm, get it malted in a thigh, which is 8 miles down the road, get it back again, brew with it, and then put the spent grain back out onto the land again. So
I think that's extraordinary.
I mean,
it's wonderful.
It makes sense because it's the easiest thing for us to do, but it also gives you that benefit of, you don't have any organic waste going off somewhere else to be processed. We're getting whatever benefit is left in there, we're getting back into the soil again. There's a little bit of fibre, a bit of carbon sequestration at the very least.
Bit of protein.
A bit of protein as well, yeah, exactly. Whatever we've left. Like, I mean, we're going to extract a lot, obviously, in the brewing process, but soil nutrition, very, very important on the farm. And even in terms of the farming, the way we do it now, we're trying to, put in cover crops, chop all the straw, so we're not sending straw off the farm anymore, trying to build up our soils as much as possible, because that's very important for us, and that's just an extra part of it. Yeah,
and creating an ecosystem around it, so one thing links to another. I think there's a fascinating point to be made as well, that beer is an agricultural product, that it is something that comes from the land and ends up in people's glasses much the same as any other grain or any other foodstuff that we would grow on this island, and that it should be considered that way when we're thinking about how we continue to make it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very much important for people to see. Again, if you come to our brewery, you can go out and see the barley field, come in and taste the beers that we make from the barley. So that's one nice thing that we are able to do, being based on the farm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what you said about the spent grain, that was actually a huge challenge for us, because we're in the middle of the city.
Yeah, where do you get rid of it?
Where is the farmers, and farmers are, they were just not able to come over to us and pick it up. But luckily we found our next door neighbour has a big hardware store. He also has a farm.
Oh, excellent.
So he put a container out the back, and he picks up our spent grain every week and brings it out to his farm. And so we're delighted. But at the start, we were paying about €1,000 to get rid of the spent grain it was used as a biofuel. Yeah. And it was awful. It was messy, and but we now have a very good solution for it. And those are the challenges of being in the city. Other challenges are that our employees can't afford to live in Dublin, and that's another massive disadvantage or challenge that we have of being in the city. Yeah. But then again, they can hop on the Dart, and within a couple of stops they're at the brewery. Yeah. So there's always pros and cons of every location. But the big pro we have, that there is at least 500,000 people within 50 or 60 kilometre radius of where we are.
Yeah, who are thirsty and want their beers in their hands, which is great.
Yeah.
I think this is really interesting about looking at opportunities rather than looking at challenges when you think about locations. And when I think about the breweries that are dotted throughout Ireland and how they have reinvigorated communities in urban and in rural settings, I just find it such an exciting aspect of the industry.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of breweries in Ireland anyway, and they're all over the place. In fact, when we started, we said, look, there was about 70 breweries. There wasn't actually more than one in North County Dublin. Yeah. And there's, 20% of the population living in North County Dublin. So it was a really good location for us to get started in from a market point of view. Now I know through distributors, and you can get your beer anywhere. In fact, the three of us share a distributor in Italy.
Oh, exciting!
So that's how we get our beer in export markets as well. And but But you rely on good people.
That's an interesting point as well about extending that idea that it's a community, that you work together with each other on certain aspects of it, such as things like distribution and finding people who align with your philosophies in relation to getting your beers to other people and places. I suppose maybe that might be interesting to chat a little bit more about that kind of, I suppose, almost networking, but like working together aspect of it, which is a big part of the industry being sustainable.
Obviously we're all competitors, but we're all colleagues at the same time. So, talk to Vim talks to us, we talk to David talks to us. There's an awful lot of information that's being, handed around, and if people have questions about things, I don't think there's much of a hesitation for somebody to pick up the phone and ring up another colleague and say, I hear you're doing this, or how are you doing that? And I think particularly when it comes to maybe the question of sustainability, there's a lot of things that are new. There's a lot of things that are, you are having to kind of go back and maybe kind of change the way you're doing something, or you're looking for a supplier of something, or you're looking for just information about maybe on how a certain technology is working. And it is a very, very useful thing to be able to kind of say, I heard that, so-and-so, for example, we invested quite heavily last year in a cleaning in place system. And it's, it's a fairly, it's not exactly a sexy piece of equipment, but it helps us to reduce the amount of water that we're using. It helps us to reduce the amount of hot water that we're using. It helps us to reduce the amount of detergents that we're using to clean things. So it's having a very, very significant impact on, the inputs and the outputs from the brewery. But I was able to actually kind of, there's another colleague who was, operating a similar system, and it was quite, useful to be able to kind of ring them up and say, look, we're looking at this, is it actually helping to achieve the things that we think it will be? Yeah. And, everybody, I think, is willing to have a very frank conversation and say, yeah, it's definitely, having the impact, it's definitely doing what it should do, or, well, we're having difficulties with it, or, well, you can't just rely on the piece of equipment to do that work for you. You'll have to change some procedures as well, and it's how you operate the equipment. And so having that community that you can kind of tap into is without a doubt, very, very important, I think, for all of us. Yeah.
And it's very pleasant. It's nice. I actually bought a small piece of equipment from Rick about a year ago, and we went up there to inspect it and to have a look. And so they have been extremely helpful in terms of getting us going. It's a really nice industry to be part of, and we meet up once or twice a year, and it's always pleasant to see each other and exchange ideas. There's always a sense of helping. With the whole local thing, we also became members of Guaranteed Irish, which is all about local. Yeah, and for us, it's having local employees, local ingredients, local market, local customers. It is by far and away the most important word in our company, in our business. Yeah. And if you look at some foreign markets, like if you look at the States, like if there was an area with 500,000 people in the States, there would probably be 7 or 8 breweries living only off that area. So this is still a big challenge that we have. Like the last piece of information I saw on the craft beer market share of the total beer market, it was 2.9% according to Nielsen. Yeah. And it's nothing. And that really is our challenge, is to grow that. Because when we started, I always said, well, listen, it's only 2% of the market now. I know there's breweries starting all the time, everywhere. But if the market goes to 8 or 9%, which would only be half of what it is in the US, we'd all be happy and delighted, and we wouldn't know, we couldn't produce it fast enough. It hasn't happened yet. I know. This is a big challenge, growing that market share.
It is, yeah.
It really is. Telling the stories about it, but just getting people to be brave enough to order a beer from someone down the road who made it. It seems like such a radical choice.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's something that we still have to do a bit of work on ourselves. I mean, it's very much a case of tourism keeps us going, export keeps us going. And, the local market is very, very important to us, but it's still a challenge to try and get beers out into pubs that are 10, 15 kilometres away from us.
Yeah, and it's frustrating if you're seeing the amazing reaction to your beers in places further away from
Yes,
here,
yeah,
you know?
absolutely,
And you're like, okay, let's keep growing things that are local. And this is why the model in Hope is really interesting, but also because you have that population that's there. It is definitely more challenging when you're in places that doesn't have that population density. With Ireland, I would also challenge that every beer that's made on the island of Ireland is a local beer. And that's something that I think people should keep in mind, that it's nicer to have the one that's closest, but also everything is local here. We're brewing stuff on the island, so we should be drinking the things that are being made here, and delicious things that are being made here.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we were very lucky. There was a small music festival not too far away from us.
Oh,
over
just
the course
a tiny
of
one,
Well,
yeah.
I'm not even talking about that one. I'm not going to talk about that one because I get in trouble. No, there was a small one called Forest Fest, which was over in a place called Emo. I think there's maybe 5,000 or 6,000, and we had managed to get a stand in there because they were actually willing to support the local brewery, unlike maybe certain other music festivals which we can hear from outside the brewery gate. And it was fantastic because there was such a great reaction to the fact. I mean, people coming up saying, "Oh, great, you're in here."
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like really pleasant to see that people were coming up, delighted to see that they could actually buy a local beer at a music festival.
As a completely radical idea, which may get zero traction, but I would love if it was a requirement of planning permission for large events that they had to support local businesses in a meaningful way, and all across the sectors, not just within our traditional food side, but I think that alcohol and the drinks, particularly beer that's produced in Ireland, should be classed as a foodstuff in relation to that, and I would love to see that be a requirement of planning permission.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we'd certainly support that.
Yeah, well, we lobby hard. Like the local enterprise office in Fingal is very helpful.
Yes.
But Fingal support a lot of these local festivals, and I agree with you, Suze. Like, it needs to be a requirement.
Yeah.
If Fingal with our property tax money is supporting a local festival, then we should at least, all the food companies should have the opportunity to be part of it.
I used to work with Kildare County Council on some of the requirements around planning for a really large music festival that used to happen in Kildare, in Punchestown. And one of the requirements to gain permission to allow that festival to go ahead was to support local artists. So they had to provide space on the stages for local musicians. And I was part of the panel that helped organise that selection process. And I remember it being one of these days where I got this frantic phone call from someone going like, "You haven't signed off on this, we're going to miss our planning permission." And I just sat there for an extra 30 minutes and had a cup of tea and thought, this is important, because they need to recognise how important the local community is to the success of this festival. And if that means having a small opportunity to shine a spotlight on a local musician, why can't it be the same that we could shine lights on local beer producers as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't think market share for the larger breweries is so enormous that I can't see this being a huge competition. If we're talking about moving from less than 4% to maybe hopefully 8% of the market, it's not a huge loss. And I think it creates a much healthier, more sustainable environment, because the jobs that you're producing within local communities are incredibly valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's not even just the direct jobs, it's all the indirect jobs as well, because, all the branding, all the marketing, all the distribution, all for us, we get the local canning company in. It's all these other indirect jobs that are feeding off the direct jobs that we're producing. We have actually done it out on a spreadsheet to see what's there, but it's certainly, really, really important.
Well, I didn't want to contradict the interpretation of local too much, because I definitely I suppose, being where we are, we have a very strong local following.
Do contradict it. Go for it.
I would certainly be somebody who says, look, if it's made on the island of Ireland, it's local. I think it's great that there's breweries in small communities, but I also kind of dividing up the island based on, well, that brewery's got that region, that brewery's got that region, that brewery's got that region is is kind of it becomes a bit of a like a small territorial war after a while.
I think you're absolutely right, Rick. I love when you were talking about just the community, that this is a fun community to work in. There's a community of people who work together, and you all drink each other's beers.
Yes,
You
absolutely.
know? So why would we do this, I suppose, almost parochial, hyper local aspect of it? Like, if it's handy that you can, like, go and visit your local brewery if they happen to have a beer tap, and if you want to support that very locally, go for it, absolutely. But
Exactly, yeah.
take an all-island approach to it, like, really.
I mean, I don't think you should feel guilty about buying a craft beer that's made somewhere in Ireland.
Yeah.
Regardless of where you are in the country.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
I mean, the same. We
Nobody does.
No. we don't grow our own barley, but 70% of our malt is it's Irish barley, and it's been malted in Ireland, and we're supporting jobs kind of in other parts of the country. So we're supporting farmers, from the southern part of the island. We're supporting
Absolutely.
kind of maltsters from Kildare. So we're buying a lot of services and keeping, jobs going in other parts of the country. So I also feel that, there should be no reason why these people shouldn't also enjoy my beer on occasion. And we also, as a brewery, we also there might be events in Galway, or there could be something in Cork. It's not that we have a lot of money to kind of put towards events, but we do support things in different parts of the country, as well as things here in Donegal. So it's I think local is a great term, and I'm very kind of supportive of the idea of local, but at a certain point one gets into this question of, what exactly is local, and trying to define that becomes, it can be a little bit difficult, and the definition might change based on the context. So local in a continental context might be a lot different than local in an Irish context, or local in an American context might be a lot different than local in an Irish context. We are a small island, and to try and kind of, carve it up into an even smaller kind of, designation of, that beer is actually from Donegal, it's not local down here. It's also funny, I find, I think most tourism, I don't actually think that we benefit that we ourselves, our brewery, that we benefit that much from tourism. Most of our customers, within our domestic market, I believe, are actually domestic beer drinkers. I find that the majority of tourists who are coming into the country, the local beer for them is a Guinness.
Yeah.
And that's something we have to remember. It's like they don't have maybe the same views of Guinness, although I enjoy my pint of Guinness as much as anybody else. They don't have the same view of Guinness that that maybe we as smaller brewers working in this environment might have. For them, it's the local beer.
Yeah,
what
it is.
a wonderful contrast as well.
Oh, very much so.
And
Yeah, it is.
Whatever about a large beer competitor in the market, the fact that it has opened the door and enticed people to come to Ireland to drink beer, I think that's a remarkable thing. The fact that the Guinness Storehouse is the #1 paid tourist destination in the country. So internationally, we're known for our beer. So there's that huge opportunity to, I suppose, capitalise on that, to play on that, and to then show the other side of the beer community within Ireland. And this is the one that is based in communities, in local places, and hidden in industrial estates off various different motorways, down on farms, up in the wilds of Donegal. And I think that's really exciting. And to get people into the breweries where they can meet the people who actually make the beers.
Yeah. What I think people like when they come to us, and I'm sure the other guys as well, it's the authenticity. It's meeting the brewers, it's meeting the owners, it's meeting the people who are involved day to day, and actually seeing around the physical brewery and seeing what goes on and seeing how we make the beers and where we get our ingredients from and everything else.
It's completely different. Yeah.
Rick, you were going to chime in there.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Susan. I think that the association with Guinness, I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, what it has very definitely kind of done for Ireland is throughout the world, we would be known for having a beer culture.
Yes.
Now, one might kind of more correctly define it. What we have is actually a stout culture. We don't really have a kind of a broader beer culture, but it's giving us, it gives us a reputation. I actually think a very positive reputation for being a place that actually understands how to brew, and that does benefit, I think, all of us here who are in the business of brewing. That's a big plus. The downside to it is that we can, there is the potential for it to kind of be too much of a big shadow overwhelming what the rest of us do. But that's kind of our job then to be able to kind of break out from underneath that, use, I suppose, the reputation where it benefits us, but then make sure that we're shining well enough ourselves to kind of, I suppose, break free from the mothership, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But I think it is very definitely kind of given us an international reputation for understanding what brewing is all about.
Yeah, and I think it does. I think when you look at so many other great beer cultures and beer history throughout Europe, and because we've had this, I suppose, dark period in relation to our brewing culture, where now our craft beer industry is really nascent and really young. Yeah. And we lost so much of that culture that it's really exciting to see it come back and to see that there is the appreciation that somewhere there is this history and understanding of beer, and also that kind of the chat and enjoying a beer, spending time with people. I think that's a really nice aspect of it.
As well as Guinness, I think the whole Irish bar culture is really helpful. I mean, how many countries you go to, let's go to the German bar or let's go to the Dutch bar. No, you go to the Irish bar, and that really helps us, I think, with our export efforts as well. Mm-hmm. And the fact that there is Irish bars in probably every city in every country in the world.
I think that also plays into a part that the idea of sustainability is more than just what you it's about sustaining a culture as well. So when we can have our green credentials in check, it also means that that's a culture that can be fostered within the island of Ireland and can travel really well as well. So we have these outposts, these flag posts of like Irish bars and other places that attract people back into Ireland. So that when they see the advances, I think this is something that's interesting in relation to the culture around Irish beer is, are we in the past or what's happening in the present and what are we looking at in the future? And I think people are genuinely surprised to find how incredibly contemporary and modern and innovative Irish brewing is, and the role of sustainability, how that plays into it and sustains an industry for the future as well as what's happening right now. I think people are surprised by that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and we've, as Vim would say, like we've had people coming from Italy to Ireland, now not specifically to visit our brewery, but certainly that's been on the agenda because they've had the beers in Italy, they come over to Ireland and they want to come and see the brewery. But in terms of even getting the beers out there in the first place, the sustainability aspect of it was really important. It's one of the selling points that we have, like the three of us, and I'm sure much more within the brewing industry as well, is that if you can present a really good product, the branding's really good, the sustainability tends to be the next question.
Yeah.
It's, okay, that's great, that's lovely, we like your beers, we like the branding, we like the pricing, what are your sustainability credentials?
Yeah.
Because I think all of us are trying to do the right thing because we want to do the right thing. But it has the other advantages. I mean, Rick's already spoken about things like energy. You know, we have solar panels on the roof as well. It's been a massive help over the last 8 or 9 months, particularly obviously over the summer when we're generating a lot of power from them. But it's been a huge help financially. But it also, in terms of just marketing, it's very, very useful. Now, I mean, you're very cynical if you're just using sustainability as marketing, but it's there as a byproduct. You know, you're doing the right thing because that's what we should all be doing, but you can at least use that for marketing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we did measure we got our carbon footprint measured, for example, at the start of this year. And so it came up with a number, which is completely meaningless to me because I don't know yours, and I'd like to know it per litre to make it relevant. And maybe if it was that, we could start saying, well, listen, our beer has, so much carbon per litre. I don't know. I'm careful. I'm careful with using sustainability as a marketing tool, but having Origin Green certainly helps because that is, as you say, it's certified, it's measured, and you either get it or you don't.
What I'm really hearing is that this is a way of working. It's a way that is absolutely compatible with the ethos of your businesses. And it adds huge value beyond what you even think it's going to add to it. And also, when we consider the size and scale of each of your breweries, you have the ability to make those changes. And I think that's really great because you're all on the ground, being able to make these decisions, to be able to plot through and think forward. So that, and I love that kind of flexibility that craft brewers have and craft breweries have to be able to adapt to the challenges that are given to them by whatever the circumstances are.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we have 2 people working in the brewery, so like if we make a decision that we're going to change something, it can happen very, very quickly.
Yeah.
It's not a big chain of command to try and get decisions down to the people actually working in the brewery. So it does. It gives us, I mean, like anything, it gives us the flexibility to do that. In terms, I suppose, of anything that's involving a lot of capital expenditure, that's maybe a different story. But a lot of changes that you can make don't actually cost a lot of money, and as the guys are saying, even if you need to spend money on it, you're going to get that back very quickly on a lot of the decisions you can make on a sustainability thing.
Yeah, I think we found as well that a lot of the changes, like there's, yes, a lot of it is capital intensive, requires investment, but there's also a very significant component which is really just mindset, behavior, procedures. Looking at how you're just running your brewery. There's an awful lot that you can kind of pull out of it, and I think maybe what's quite good about, I find that brewing in and of itself is basically it's one long series of problem solving. It's just solving one problem after another. Like somebody asked me what my job description was, and I said it's problem solving. And I think most brewers are actually like that. Especially if you're a smaller brewery and you don't have big budgets that you can just say, okay, well, to solve this problem, we buy X. We can't do that. We have to figure out another way of doing it, which means, especially that when we're looking at the question of sustainability, the mindset is almost already kind of baked into most smaller breweries. Okay, we need to somehow kind of fix this problem. Let's see how we can do it, because we don't have. You won't be able to solve every problem, but you'll be able to solve a good few without necessarily having big budgets to do it.
Yeah, I think this is a lovely note to end on, the idea that you don't need a big budget, you just need a flexible mindset. And to thank you all for joining us on this episode to really kind of give us an insight into how these steps help create sustainable businesses in sustainable communities. And I'm just delighted to hear about what you've been doing and to enjoy plenty more of your beers in the future as well, because that's what really sustainability is about, keeping the planet green and the businesses going as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Susan.